is absent. I'd like to just poll everybody. We have two items that we're going to be dealing with today. I just want to make sure that no one believes either item would present them with a conflict of interest. Anybody have any conflicts of interest?
None.
No. Okay. Tonight we actually have two cases that we're going to be hearing. ORA 21-0005 is a code amendment regarding a minor administrative change to the Hauser ACI that was approved last year. The second case is ORA 21-0002, which is a code amendment regarding subsurface sewage disposal over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. To make the process more efficient and effective tonight, we will combine the staff report and the public comments. So either any individual who wants to do public comment, they could speak at any time throughout the public comment period. We will deliberate separately once we complete the public comment phase. The hearing process is our normal hearing process, which means that Director Callahan will provide a staff update about the two items that we will be hearing tonight. Give us an opportunity to ask questions and make sure that we have clarity about what is being asked of us. Once that happens, we will open the public comment period up, listen to all the public comments. We've also received one written that is in your packet. Once we've heard all the public comments, we will close the public comment period for both of the cases, and then we'll move into deliberations and we'll handle each one of those cases separately. Any questions? If not, I'd like to officially open up the public hearing for ORA 21-005, Hauser ACI Code Amendment, and ORA 21-0002, Subsurface Sewage Disposal. Director Callahan, would you like to begin your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good evening, everyone. The Hauser ACI amendment is an amendment to the Land Use and Development Code because all of our ACIs, area city impacts that is, are embedded into the Land Use and Development Code. So you are considering a code amendment tonight. The amendment really dates back to November 12th of 2020 when we first adopted the revised Hauser ACI. And at that time, our legal counsel wants to be admitted, pardon me. There, he's on Zoom now. Okay. At that time, my staff and I frankly missed that there are parcels in the Hauser ACI area that we have rezoned as of November 2020 to county zoning, and that are smaller than the various county zones minimally require. In rough numbers, there's some 700 and something parcels in the ACI. 50-something of them are substandard, meaning less than 5 acres, or some other smaller standard, depending on the zoning district. And we don't actually know how many of those 50 are truly substandard because we would have to do the research on every one of them. But to give you a for instance, to my knowledge, there has only been one parcel that we needed this amendment for since the adoption in November of 2020. So it's not exactly a high pressure item, but it is nonetheless an important one. We, the staff and I, said throughout the ACI update that we meant to create as little nonconformity as humanly possible. So this is my way of circling back around and fixing a minor detail in a way that I hope is unambiguous. I can highlight on the screen for you and the audience's sake the new language that would effectively say that any parcel that was eligible for permits under the Hauser's zoning categories would continue to be eligible under the county's zoning districts. It's truly that straightforward. There are no other issues that I'm aware of. You have one, I think, response and support. I haven't had any phone calls or emails directly to me other than that. And perhaps because back in February of this year, at the Hauser Council request, we hosted a public meeting at the firehouse, and there were 30-something people showed up, and we talked for about an hour until everyone there really understood exactly what this was about. So unless you have questions, that's all I have to say about this one.
Does anyone have any questions? Everybody's clear about what we're being asked to do? Okay.
Thank you. Should we move on to the,
Do you want to have a little, just
or
on?
do you want to go through and see if there's any,
No, I mean, you can go and do a report on the other item if you'd like.
okay, that was my
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
I wanted to know your preference.
Yeah, I want to just combine it and then we'll
Get it out,
move into the
okay.
public hearing, public
I thought
comment
that's what you
together.
meant, but
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure. I'm pulling up on the screen Aaron Quall's information to share. What would you like first, Aaron?
Let's just bring up the staff report if we could.
Sure.
It's the,
Which one then is that top one?
I don't
That's the
think it's either.
analysis.
I don't
Is
think
it-
it's any of those.
Hang on, just, I thought, maybe, is this it? No, that's the actual ordinance. Well, that's embarrassing. I thought we had drug it in here. We can find it and pull it up. I'll talk for a moment, just to set the stage, and then turn it over to you, and then I'll go find that and drag it into this file.
Okay. I can send it to you right now.
Okay, or we can do it electronically. But this next item, the subsurface sewage disposal ordinance, is, you may recall from our workshops, a permanent solution to a temporary ordinance that expires in September. The reason for this permanent request and the reason for the emergency ordinance was that at the end of last year, the state legislature made it unambiguous for the first time in decades that our Panhandle Health District is not a state agency, and they are a district like a sewer district. And so they lost their IDAPA ruling authority, meaning the ability to set out regulation that everyone in the state would have to follow. And so since 1977, that IDAPA ruling had been in place, doing the very thing that our emergency ordinance now accomplishes, and this proposed final ordinance would make permanent into the Land Use and Development Code. It's fair to say that there is nothing in this ordinance that is above and beyond what PhD always did. The easy way to think about this is that it just changes the authority. It used to be entirely PhD. Now, ultimately, the county is in charge of this. The one or two other things I can think to add before I turn it over to Aaron Qualls, our consultant, is that we, at the request of PhD's legal counsel, their director, and my cohort, Eric Kettner, who runs the environmental division of PhD, all of them expressly asked me and my legal counsel, Pat Braden, to use the 1977 map, which is part of your packet and the part of the ordinance proposal. And that staff is here today, Mr. Kettner and others, by that I mean DEQ staff is here as well, to talk about the why on this. But my short version of why is I don't ever try to substitute my land use planning and experience as a director or a planner for other experts who are knowledgeable in their field. In this case, hydrology and sewage disposal and so on and so forth. And so because we always defer to PhD and DEQ and others for referrals, I'm going to mute who's ever on that. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment.
Thank you.
Oh,
Now muted.
okay. So back to the point. I think I'm not going to speak to the issue of mapping other than what I just shared with you, unless you have questions of me. But I will say that there are residents from the Greens Ferry area that would like an ear tonight. One lady in particular called me today, I believe her name was Jan, and asked if she could, Mr. Chairman, could have as much as 10 minutes. That's, of course, your prerogative. Mm-hmm. But the residents of the Greens Ferry area believe the 77 map is in error, and they will be ready to explain why they believe that. I believe the county could adopt whatever map the county wants, but I would caution that whatever map we adopt should follow good science and good suggestions from the people that know most about these things. So unless you have questions of me, I'm going to find the email that Aaron just sent me and pull up what he wanted to show.
Yeah, if you could just pull up the map that I think is on page 3 or 4. But without stealing the thunder of the other agencies here to speak on this issue, the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer covers about 200 miles in Idaho. It serves about 500,000 people in the region. It is a sole source aquifer and the only sensitive resource aquifer designated by the state of Idaho. And as such, it warrants the highest level of protection according to Idaho Administrative Code. And as David mentioned, this really just kind of affirms locally what has been in practice since the 70s. It affects essentially 3 zones that would otherwise have smaller lot sizes than the 5-acre that have been in place. And David will bring up those maps shortly, but the affected zones are ag suburban, residential, restricted residential, high density residential. And I think it's important to mention that they would only be affected if not connected to a sewer system, because the purpose is to protect groundwater quality for the county and the region. In addition, the other rules have been placed in the ordinance. Again, nothing new or different than has been in practice since the 70s, related to some general restrictions about prohibition of domestic sewage in on surface or in the groundwater, and various other elements that I've outlined that you've had 2 workshops on now. That really kind of carries forward what the Board of County Commissioners has adopted as an emergency ordinance, which will expire at the end of on September 25th of this year. We have done it's always important to ensure that your ordinance is in accordance with your adopted comprehensive plan. We provided a consistency analysis scan for that, which I believe you have also reviewed. And it's my understanding that previously there was concurrence with that by both legal counsel and after being reviewed by this body. In your staff report, we've provided a draft motion. If you decide to recommend adoption, which will subsequently go to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration. So let's see, I think scroll up a little bit more.
You want the map?
Yeah. So we've put together this map. We can zoom out a little bit. Hopefully I don't go haywire here with these controls. But what you're seeing is the 1977 USGS map of the aquifer. The white areas are incorporated cities, so no jurisdiction there. And then the other colored areas are the affected zones that I mentioned: agricultural, suburban, restricted residential, and high density residential. So those are the only zones that would have a 5-acre minimum if not connected to a sewer system. And again, this is no different than what has been practiced since 70s when this map was adopted and PhD started enforcing the rules. That is really all I have to present, unless there are questions or unless I missed something.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I should mention, I erred on reviewing Mr. Quall's staff report. If you look on page 5, under sewage disposal restrictions proposed, on the third bullet where it says grandfathering of parcels of land created, it should say before, not after.
Oh.
And it should say December 20th, not December 10th. I'm sorry, I just didn't catch that earlier.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the blame for my error. I apologize for that. It is correct in the ordinance.
Yes, and you can confirm that, anyone that wants to, by just looking at the ordinance itself on page 4, under paragraph C, subparagraph 3A, where it says December 20th and so on.
David, as part of this presentation, would you like to have the Panhandle Health and others speak now?
I would please, and I would just also note, because I forgot to mention for this item and the previous item, that as a matter of statute, we always notice in the Coeur d'Alene Press, because that's our newspaper of record, and we do so 28 days before your hearing as a general rule. Some things flex less than that, but 28 is our standard. And that's been our protocol for decades, because the Coeur d'Alene Press is an easy and accessible paper, and they've been the county's newspaper of record all this time. So we've met the legal statute for your hearing tonight. It's properly before you, but we also notice on our webpage and on the agendas that we produce.
Thank you.
So yes, if at this time, if it's okay with you, I'd just ask Eric Kettner to come up to the microphone, and then Dan McCracken to follow. And then there's a couple other people that may wish to speak after that.
Right, when we open up the public comment period.
Right.
Yeah, this is just a staff presentation period.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Logie, and thank you, members of the commission. My name is Eric Kettner. I'm the Environmental and Health Protection Division Administrator at the Panhandle Health District. I think David did a good job of summarizing the position that we found ourselves in. As stated, this rule has been in effect since December 20th of 1977. It was the result of a collaborative effort with the county, with various stakeholders, that did result in this rule. And I can say that it has been tremendously effective in protecting the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, which is the sole source of drinking water for this entire community. This rule set is specific to Kootenai County. The Panhandle Health District has other rules that apply to all 5 counties within the district, but the 5-acre rule has been specific to Kootenai County, whereby I know it's tends to be the counties not to get into the sewerage type of business, but this really is more about protecting the water supply for the community and the resource that does truly involve Kootenai County. So we also, I should state, have been working very collaboratively with the Kootenai County Aquifer Protection District since its formation back in 2007, 2008. So we do view this as a shared challenge, and we've greatly appreciated David Callahan and his staff for working with us to, in fairly rapid order, put together an ordinance that very closely mirrors our rule.
Any questions? Okay.
I have one.
Yeah, Deborah.
Hi. I'm wondering if any effort has been taken since the current boundaries, and I'm not sure, maybe Aaron is the right one to ask this, if any efforts have been taken since 1977 to reevaluate the boundaries of the aquifer?
And Chairman, I don't want to step too far out of place. We work very collaboratively with DEQ as well. They have hydrogeologists on staff. My rough understanding, and they may be able to expand further, is that the answer to that would be no in regards to the specific boundary of the aquifer. The current boundary, the 1977 boundary, was based on a study that was completed with a best available technology at the time, and a decision ultimately landed on. Some of the concerns that I have with a new boundary that wasn't specifically, I do know the work has been done in the mid-2000s in regards to water quantity potentially in regards to the aquifer. I would be concerned without having a thoroughly vetted study to apply a new boundary that is going to then apply these regulations to areas that have not had these regulations applied to them. I think that we will see challenges if we don't have a well-supported boundary.
Thank you.
Is that?
Whose responsibility, who owns the responsibility for the mapping? Is there one agency or is it a,
I know that there are other entities besides the Panhandle Health District that, yeah, should I step, I should.
We'll jump in and help.
Yes, yeah, that might be
Okay.
helpful. Would you like me to remain up here or?
no, I mean, we could always call you back if we need to, if that's okay.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're asking the wrong person.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. So, yes.
Well, you do. Good evening. My name is Gary Stevens. I work for the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. I've been a hydrogeologist for the department for about 20 years, doing most of my work on the aquifer, the Breathitt Prairie Aquifer. The questions you're asking are very good, and it has been brought, that particular question has been brought to us before. It's kind of a challenging question because when you say, what's the aquifer boundary? The aquifer itself is sort of like a lake. It can go up, it can go down, it'll seasonally change, it'll change over years. That boundary it's very dynamic and constantly changing. I think the question really is, what was the purpose of the boundary? And originally the purpose was to protect the aquifer water quality. And the boundary that the USGS developed and has been incorporated by everybody has been very successful at that. Now, we've had people in the past say, well, we think should change it here, or we should change it here. The problem is it's a very involved process, especially for DEQ. It'd be a long legal process that has to be approved by the legislature and eventually by the governor. So it'd literally be something years in the making. So right now, the boundary is consistent with DEQ's boundary. It's consistent with PhD's boundary. And to a certain extent, Water Resources has a groundwater management area, and it's consistent with their boundary. So right now, all the boundaries for the most part coincide. Asking about the mapping, actually the Idaho Geological Survey does most of the mapping in the area. Again, trying to define where the aquifer boundary is a little bit of a challenge. The USGS in 2006 created an aquifer model. The reason for that model was to try to determine water quantity issues. And so what they did is they created a model boundary that worked for them. In their documents, they specifically stated that, in fact, their model boundary is not meant to be a redefinition of the aquifer. So, again, it's a model boundary that worked for them. Again, is try to address a large regional water budget issue. So for them, it worked, but it's not consistent with the regulatory boundaries that we've been using. And again, in their documentation, they specifically state that it's not meant to be a redefinition of the aquifer.
If a study was done, it's years in the making to do the science, to go and evaluate it, and then did I hear that it would involve the governor and the legislature?
Well, if you're going to go through the whole, for us, for DEQ, it is an IDAPA rule. So you'd have to change that IDAPA rule. So it would have to go through that entire process, that legal process.
So, just so I think we're all clear, there is an official map.
Mm-hmm.
What we're dealing with is the code that identifies that as the baseline that we're considering changing
Right.
the code to mirror basically what Panhandle Health has done since 1977.
Right.
If we change, I guess Director Callahan, we could have any map we wanted without, but we have to have basis, the county would have to have a basis for deciding which is,
Yes, at the very least, you would need to express a rational basis, and the county commissioners would too.
and also I would think that this is a substantial change to the notice requirement if we're changing a boundary and other citizens haven't been noticed that that is a consideration.
I'd ask Pat to weigh in on that one.
Okay.
Well, this is one that doesn't require individual notice because it's an ordinance text amendment that applies, in this case, to a certain particular area of the county. Although I would think that at least a significant change to the map would require a renotice just to notify people that the boundary could be larger or smaller than was originally contemplated. I don't think a minor change to the boundary, though, would be necessarily problematic, but I would say the most defensible boundary is the one that was adopted by the Environmental Protection Agency in 1977 and also by Panhandle Health District and DEQ. Because based on the science available at that time, I would note that the EPA has not changed its boundary since 1977 either, and that would require a rulemaking procedure under the federal APA, as the boundary would be required to go through the IDAPA process at the state level. So I would highly recommend that we leave the boundaries as they are, at least for this time, just to get the PhD rule that they had adopted permanently by the county, and then subsequent to that, we can certainly consider any changes to the boundary based on the best available science at that time.
Thanks, Pat.
And that was our legal counsel for the county.
Question, Sherry, Paul, anybody?
I have one.
Okay,
Dave, I have one.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Sorry. Excuse me.
I'm sorry,
I have a question.
just jump
here.
in.
Just while I have you here.
Sure.
More for curiosity, would we, not counting this year where we've had all this rain, but could we anticipate that with the growth in our area, that, and all the added water usage, that the aquifer could be shrinking?
So the study that was done in 2006 by the USGS was specifically to try to address that question. And so they've, again, developed a computer model to try to make predictions like that. I think for the most part, the answer would be no. We wouldn't necessarily see it within the context of just natural elevation and lowering of the aquifer. Largely, the biggest question was whether water drawdown or usage on the Idaho side would impact Spokane River flows actually in Washington State. That was largely what drove that whole thing. At the time, there was a lot of water rights requests for cogen plants, and they consume really a considerable amount of water. And without really understanding how the aquifer worked, there was real concern about exactly that kind of thing. So after they developed the computer model, they started going through different scenarios. And what they determined was that, for at least for Idaho, there certainly is enough water. And the pumping on the Idaho side didn't seem to have any appreciable impact on the Spokane River.
Thank you.
Now, but just to address one thing that I think really what we're here for, I can tell you I've been a hydrogeologist for 25 plus years. You can drill a well here and you can pump 3,000 gallons per minute with hardly any drawdown whatsoever. And quite frankly, I've rarely seen anything like this. It is coarse gravel and cobbles. What makes it such a great prolific aquifer for pumping water also makes it very vulnerable to surface activities because those contaminants now can flow down from the surface to the aquifer. So Panhandle's 1 to 5 rule has really been, I think, really critical at protecting this aquifer from subsurface sewage. So if we didn't have that, the amount of growth, especially that they're predicting, again, in 2060, they're looking at perhaps 400,000 people is what some of the projections have. And without this type of protection, I think we'd see significant water quality impacts.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
We have other speakers when you're ready.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
us.
What I want to do now is open up the public comment period. There's a couple of guidelines for the people who are going to speak. First of all, we would like your name and your address for the public record so we could document that. We normally ask the members of the public to speak up to 5 minutes. That's pretty much what we do, but because of the small number of people, I think we could be a little more flexible, because I understand someone would like to speak a little more than 5 minutes, but I would appreciate trying to keep it between the 5 and 10 minute time frame. And then, obviously, I believe that probably all of these have to do with the Aquifer discussion. So, but if somebody has a comment to do with Hauser, could you please make sure we understand that the comment is about that particular case? So I'll turn it over to Director Callahan, who will call the first member of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just read these in the order that I've received them. And at the moment, there are no Hauser speakers. These are all for the subsurface sewage disposal.
Okay.
And our first speaker is John Austin.
Nice to see some old faces. Well, not old faces, Dave, but
Familiar.
familiar faces. Well, good evening. My name is John Austin, 3760 West Fairway Drive in Coeur d'Alene. And I'm here on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Green Ferry Water and Sewer District. I've been the consulting manager there, associated with the district for almost 21 years now. Seen a lot of growth in those 21 years, including 3 real large subdivisions that have come in between 12 and 27 lots each. They were all south of our district on the hillsides around Green Ferry Road, if you're familiar with Riverview in that area. I'm here with Dr. Baumsteiger, who's an expert on just about everything, it seems to be. If you have any questions about anything, he's happy to speak on them as well. I'll be very brief with my comments and really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. The Board of Directors wanted me to come by and let you know that we're really concerned about the protection of our wells. We have 2 which are just south of the Spokane River in the vicinity of Kelly Road and Michael Way. So they're just probably a couple hundred yards from the river on the south side. Those of you who are not familiar, Green Ferry Water District is just south of Post Falls. Basically Crystal Bay Road on the west to Rainbow on the east, and then the areas around Riverview Drive and Green Ferry Road. Used to be a bridge crossed there. Bridge is gone now. The people are still there. We have 417 hookups, representing about 1,000 residents of the county. One of the largest water districts in the county. The reason we're here is there was a report in 2003 by the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, and they did a source water assessment study on our wells. And we had 1 well at the time. We now have 2, and we're looking at a possible 3rd well in that same location. We're doing pump tests to see that there's any impact on the source water, any drawdown of our source water before we do the 3rd well, and that's before DEQ for approval. The report indicated that the wells are in fact drawing their source of water from the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. And that's on between pages 6 and 9 of the report, which I'd be happy to leave with you if you'd like. And in the report, it was very clear that we are over the aquifer, despite the fact that the USGS maps and the others that have been adopted show that the district is not over the aquifer. So we believe our wells are, and we're looking for some protection for those wells, obviously, for those 1,000 residents. The report also indicates that the septic systems are the highest concern for contamination and encourages the district to do as much as we can to implement water protection measures to protect those wells. To that effect, we have done several things over the last 20 years. Most specifically, the board provided testimony to DEQ 2 years ago to move the boundary of the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer south of the river, because obviously the report from DEQ states that we are over the aquifer. That, of course, would change then the type of density that we would look to see in the area that is designated over the aquifer. And then we asked the Kootenai County to consider a lower density for any land that's around our wells. There was one parcel of about 40 acres that was zoned 3 per acre, and it was reduced to 2 per acre at our request, but it is still high density for that purpose. And so almost immediately upon that designation, we got a request for a 57-lot subdivision right next to our wells, each on their own septic system. So the concern immediately raised a red flag. What impact would those 57 septic systems have on our 2 wells, soon to be 3? And so a condition of a will serve to them, they're in the district, so they deserve to get water from us, but we wanted to make sure the conditions were met before anything was done. And so we required a MPE, or nutrient pathogen evaluation, level 1 and level 2, that would be accepted by DEQ's experts, since they're the experts on water quality, to show that there was no impact should those 57 septics be located on the property adjacent to our wells. And so that's where we are today. That application, I believe, is pending with the county, awaiting the DEQ's review of the MPE level 1 and level 2 studies. And finally, we're also a sewer district, not just a water district, although we don't have any sewer facilities. But we did commission, we budgeted this year $30,000 for an engineering study to find out what we could do on the sewer management side. There are things like Dalton Gardens does, such as ensuring that all septics are pumped every 3 to 5 years, whatever the standard is. So that's something we would look at through this study. So we've done the best we can, I think, to try to minimize the impact on our wells. Finally, I'll just say that we believe there's enough compelling evidence from the studies from USGS, IDEQ, Water Resources, that our district's wells are in the aquifer, and we would appreciate the 1 home per 5 acre rule being applied to those areas adjacent to our wells. Any questions of me? Otherwise, I'll step aside.
Deborah.
The area where those 57 houses would be put, is it anywhere close to where they could be hooked up to the Post Falls sewer system?
No. No, we're across the river from Post Falls, so they would have to go under the river, I guess.
Okay.
It'd be quite expensive to do that. And the city of Post Falls has said they'll only serve areas that are annexed into the city, and the district residents don't want to be in the city. They like the rural nature of their area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
may I ask Mr. Austin,
sure.
do you want this entered into the record?
If I could, David, that would be
So
great.
this is,
That'll be entered in as P1004.
Thank you.
John, I got a question.
Sure.
Did you indicate that you contacted DEQ a couple of years ago and requested their assistance in incorporating your area into the map? Is that what I heard?
Yes, correct.
What was their response?
Well, the response, I think, is that that's a legislative issue, changing the boundary of the aquifer. And so
Okay.
it's a legislative issue that should be brought up at that level. And we're not entirely sure how all that works. We just know that we'd like to be sure we have some
Okay.
protection for our district. And And DEQ's been very good reviewing our MPE level 1, and now they're the level 2. They've responded
Right.
promptly to the developer who is funding that. And so we feel very comfortable that it's in good hands with them.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have Robert, I believe it's Stigal, S-T-I-G-A-L, it looks like, but says does not wish to speak.
Okay.
So unless he's changed his mind, I'll go forward. Thank you.
If you have time, I didn't want to take a lot of time.
He does want to speak. He does want to speak.
Oh, well, come up then and give your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Robert, middle initial R, last name is Steiger, S-T-I-G-E-R. I live at 11831 West Riverview Drive, Post Falls, Idaho. I am on the board, elected board to the Board of Green Ferry Water and Sewer. I don't know how to explain this to you, but we live have our water district, genesis is a alluvial fan. I don't want to use those words, but it's gravel and things that came from the mountains and from the Great Missoula floods, right? And it sits in a little pocket on the south side of the river. It's unique. All around us are mountains, some of the oldest structures on this continent, and so you don't have to dig very deep once you get off of that little flat area, that alluvial fan, till you hit rock. So there's in that whole area, there's just no other place. The people that live further down the river, like myself, have no chance of getting a production well we can count on. So it's just this unique little jewel, and what we want to do is make sure that it doesn't become polluted. There's nowhere to go. When we decided to put a third well in, I looked for other places around there to get water. I just couldn't find anything that was going to be, produce enough water for us to drill for a well. Even in the little fan we're in a little area that's pretty unique. So I have had Daniel Sturgis, who's with IDWR, write a report for us to tell us that he's been watching it and believes that we're part of the aquifer. I tell you, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I did a lot of work in geothermal well. I ran a company called Well Production Testing. So I spent a lot of time around hydrogeologists. But I can understand why the first place to pick for the boundary was the river. That's where the faults are, right? And they normally end up stopping water from going across them. In this case, that didn't happen. I think we are part of that aquifer. But that's beside the point. What we really want to do is make sure that little area where we can get water on the south side of the river is protected. And so I would ask you to put us under this emergency or this code so that we can protect that piece of property. Are there any questions?
Can you show us?
Yeah, I was going to actually ask the same question.
Well, I didn't bring a map with me.
You can go up there.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing.
Can
We
you
got
can
the
you
map
get to
up
the
there.
river there with that? He's going to move over, I think. You have to go down.
Actually, that's as
Yeah,
good as it
this is the,
That's as good as I'm going to be able to get.
yeah.
Can zoom in on it if you want.
But you won't see any more.
So this is the river down in here, right?
Right.
And in one of these little bumps, there's a little pocket behind it. It's surrounded by mountains. And so it's directly across from Green Ferry Road on the other side of the river. And so Green Ferry Road bisects that little piece of earth, and the top end of it is pretty much where River Blue Drive goes across. And so there's this little area of poorly consolidated material that contains the water. So I'm sorry, I should have brought a map along.
No, it's okay, but it gives us a reference point, which I appreciate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
That's all right.
Question.
Sure.
How far to the east does your system go?
Well, there's a place called Upriver Drive, you know where that's at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you
Yes,
come
I
down Upriver Drive, to the east of that,
Okay.
there's a hill, mountains.
Yeah.
So it's kind of blocked off right about there. I mean, it changes pretty quickly. It's not a very big area.
So west of there, everybody's on their own.
Well, anytime you get out of that, now we've run lines down to Crystal Bay. I live on Riverview, west of there, right? But I'm in a part of where we're on a scree slope.
Right.
So you can dig anywhere you dig and you find big rocks. It's coming off of the mountains behind us. But there's just, you don't have to go very deep to get solid rock. And so it's hard to get water out of solid rock.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think not.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Next is David Schultz.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity here at late notice here that I can possibly represent the Greens Ferry Water District customers that have for 4 years or more been submitting information to the county, submitting information to all the regulators that are involved. My name is Dave Schultz. My address, West Highland Drive, Coeur d'Alene. I live just up above this particular water district. I have a past history of being 28 years as a capital program manager for the city of Coeur d'Alene's wastewater utility. I've been trying to help ferry this process to conclusion as best I can with whatever knowledge I might have of the system. Our group of concerned citizens would have liked to have been part of the workshops that we've later found out that your commission put together. I'm not sure if it was possible or not, but I had talked with David Callahan in April, let him know how concerned we were of trying to put together the regulators, all of them that are involved in this controversy that's been happening for 4 years or more. It was pointed out in 2018 that there's a mismatch with the zoning regulations in this area. It was pointed out how concerned the water customers were about this potential vacant land being turned into a huge subdivision that was going to pollute their wells that are right next to it. There's just a miscommunication, I think, between Mr. Callahan and our group, and myself. But we essentially lost contact with those hearing announcements that were buried, in the legal ads in the Coeur d'Alene press that seemingly nobody takes anymore or reads anymore. I personally was on vacation for 3 weeks during that entire time period that you had your workshop. There's a huge amount of information and detail that our group has submitted to the county for the last 4 years. I'm wondering if anybody could tell me from the Planning and Zoning Commission whether or not the Greens Ferry water concerns were addressed in your workshops. Can anybody
Well,
speak to
they
that?
were not,
That's what I was afraid of.
yeah. I
So,
will say that the focus of the workshops were to take the emergency ordinance and put it into code or make an ordinance so that it would become permanent. And the urgency we had was to get that done before September 25th. So in respect that we did not get that information, it wasn't isolated to your area. It was just that we were focused on a very narrow project, if you want to put it that way. At our workshops, when we had our first workshop, the issue of the map came up. I think it was Deborah who brought it up. And so we wanted to know more about how the map is 1977, has things changed. The challenge we had was having a deadline of September 25th. If we do not recommend doing this, and the county commissioners do not, during their public hearing process, approve this, then on the 26th, I guess, of September, the area that we're talking about, the mapping area, will revert back to the zones that area is in, and would do harm to the water quality, which is one of the most important things we have. So we're not, I just want you to be aware, it's not that we're not interested in the map, we really are. And we wanted, and we actually talked at that time about trying to understand how, on the next time we work on this, how do we go and get the right map? Because again, Deborah brought it up, and we were trying to figure it out. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Well, that is admirable that your county, our county is taking that on. That's hugely important, no doubt. And I accept this reason that we weren't involved at that time. And so then I apologize for not being on top of that hearing better than we were, and that we have to come to you now, last ditch effort here, to essentially present some information. And so we're essentially, again, this is multiple times that we've come to the county to get some relief for the protection of those wells that is no different than the rest of the aquifer you're trying to protect. No different. And there are, in discussions about mapping, and there's another source of information, that we've given this to the county staff. They know that it's there. We've given it to all of the agencies. We're talking about DEQ, we're talking about Panhandle Health, we're talking about the county staff, we're talking about the commissioners even. We're talking about the Aquifer Protection Board. There isn't an agency out there that doesn't understand this serious concern that in 2020, there was a huge petition that was given to the county at that time, requesting something be done about this mapping problem. Panhandle Health, they've essentially dug in and they've essentially said, we can't do anything until the legislative ruling is changed. So this group has essentially gone to the Board of Environmental Quality in Boise to essentially look for reconsideration of that mapping, or reconsideration of any rule that they have to be able to save those wells from any potential pollution, similar to the rest of the aquifer. There are multiple maps out there. And you heard that, oh gosh, it's like there are maps out there for other considerations, and they always have a little disclaimer, not for legislative purposes or whatever. Well, they were for some serious purposes because there was a lot of money spent. There was a lot of also distribution to the public. And these maps essentially clearly show that the aquifer is right under those wells. And all of anybody that knows that those wells that are pumping 500 gallons per minute, They're not pumping out of some little general resource aquifer that DEQ is trying to put it in a easy to identify little area. You know, the city's pumps are pumping at that rate, you know, to provide the entire region, you know, with their water supply. So, anyway, the maps are there. We've given those maps. We can identify a lot more clearly, and we will, you know, if given time. And I'm gonna wrap it up. But the county now, in our mind, you know, there's seemingly a willingness by regulators, by the developer, the landowners. There's a willingness to subject these Greens Ferry water to a potential pollution that's a different mindset than what you guys are trying to do. And it just seems wrong. It's wrong. We've identified that for 4 years. It's wrong. And you have an opportunity right now to do something about it, whether it be remapping, you know, with your jurisdiction and with your land use codes. You've got the ability to do something. And if you can't remap it, then take a look at that one area of the comprehensive plan and say, gosh, there's enough evidence there that looks like that's a sensitive area, and we should have a different zone. And that zone shouldn't allow 10 times more the septic tank density than what you're proposing for all the rest of the aquifer area. It just doesn't, I mean, it would be a travesty if you didn't take this opportunity to essentially change that, resolve that problem. You can do it on a local level. You've got the jurisdiction. You do not have to, and I'm going to guess your attorney may weigh in on this, you don't have to, essentially go at the pace that DEQ is willing to go, at the pace that Panhandle Health is willing to go. Your legislators, some of our legislators, they know about this issue. We've started a process to discuss that with them, and they're very aware of it, and they say, oh yeah, man, that is a problem. Wow, that's a problem. But nobody's been willing to even identify who's responsible for the mapping, and who can do that, and who, what documentation do you need? So I'm gonna, just to see if you have any questions of me, but then let others present the latest petitions now for the county to consider from this group of concerned water customers.
Any questions?
Just said.
Anybody have any questions for David?
My notes for the record.
Okay.
Exhibit.
That'll be entered as P 1005.
Thank you so much.
Josette Schultz is our next speaker.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Josette Schultz, and my address is 5552 West Highland Drive in Coeur d'Alene, and we're on Highland Ridge. You go down to West Riverview, and that's where, we actually drive past the tanks for the Greens Ferry Water District on our way down the hill to West Riverview and out to like Spokane Street. So we pass right by this 28-acre piece of land that, is possibly going to be developed with 57 homes with 57 septic tanks, and that's why we're involved. But anyway, I've been asked to read a statement on behalf of the customers of the Greens Ferry Water District, and so thank you for giving me that opportunity. Since 2018, concerned citizens and water customers in and around Green Ferry Water District have petitioned and pleaded with Kootenai County officials to help protect their water supply. The Water District has also submitted several plans in this regard that expresses their concern for the pollution of their wells, primarily due to septic tank density. Since 2018, county staff is aware that a conflict exists with respect to the zoning allowed in the area around the Green Ferry wells. The county has been relying on other agencies to help sort out resolution of this conflict. All of the state and local agencies are keenly aware of this conflict, and intuitively all have a sense that the Green Ferry wells draw from the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. How can anyone question this when the wells are pumping 500 gallons per minute? The Department of Water Resources issued an attached letter in 2020 that tells of the U.S. Geological Survey 2005 investigation that extended the aquifer boundary to include areas south of the outdated 1978 EPA boundary to include the Green Ferry wells. Their local investigations also support this fact. Several other reports and maps used by the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality show the same aquifer underlying the wells. The county now is in the position to update the land use ordinance to solve this dilemma that the other agencies have not resolved. Panhandle Health District and IDEQ have been waiting for a legislative rule change to allow enforcing an updated boundary. Unfortunately, this waiting for someone else to start the process is putting the water of 1,000 people at risk due to development pressure to install 10 septic tanks per 5 acres instead of 1 per 5 acres. That has been the protection of every other water source drawing from the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. Now, a renewed plea is submitted by petition to use this newly recognized responsibility of the county to do what is right to protect Green Ferry water, along with the same water that serves the entire region. The responsibility for enacting rules that provide for protection of our environment also comes at the time when the public is calling for the county to use whatever means possible to control the rampant growth that is plaguing us. Helping to protect Green Ferry's vulnerable water source by limiting additional septic tanks in the property next to the wells is an obviously compelling way to show support for the interests of the public. Detailed information regarding this issue can be seen in the community website, safewaterplease.com. safewaterplease.com. These details should be reviewed to allow the county commissioners to resolve this dilemma with their local jurisdictional powers. We request that planning and zoning go back to the drawing board and consider all of the information that has been submitted to the county staff and propose language in the new ordinance that includes the vacant acreage adjacent to the Green Ferry wells for the same protection as applied to all other properties overlying the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. If a new ordinance with most current aquifer mapping documents is not possible, then additional zoning regulations should be proposed that address just the Green Ferry water protection needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think
Thank
my
you so much.
notes are.
Yeah. Part of that.
Our next speaker is Jane Morgan.
Hello. Lots of paraphernalia here. I'm Jane Morgan. I live on Riverview Drive in Post Falls, and I'm here to deliver a message from hundreds of petitioners who depend upon Green Ferry Water and Sewer District for our sole source drinking water. You've heard a lot about our Green Ferry story tonight. And speakers have told you that we have been mounting several petition efforts over the last 2 years. We've been very vocal at numerous meetings and hearings, and we are always begging, as Dave said, always begging state and local officials to protect our 2, soon to be 3, water wells from a real and present danger. We are reduced to begging because of that proverbial line in the sand, which is our name for the outdated and incorrect EPA USGS aquifer boundary of 1977. This boundary has become a noose around our community neck because it denies our community the proper protection under the 5-acre rule. As a group, we are greatly supportive of the Kootenai County's new effort to preserve and enforce the 5-acre rule because we actually understand on a visceral level how important it really is. The proposed sewage disposal ordinance is disappointing to us, however, because we see that it leaves us, it still abandons us, Green Ferry water customers, to the dangerous situation involving the cluster housing developer who, as you know, proposes to dig 57 septic tanks and place 57 drain fields into a little 28-acre hayfield astride a trough of shallow groundwater that travels directly north into our adjacent well pumps. While it's true there are homes and other septic systems in the area, fortunately most of those older homes are east and north of our wells. And since the groundwater travels basically north, we believe that we are spared a lot of pollution from these older residential areas because that pollution is moving towards the river, which is not good either. The 28 acres proposed for 57 drain fields lies directly south of our pumps, only meters away from the closest septic systems. And that groundwater in that trough underneath that 28-acre parcel is as shallow as approximately 100 feet in summer months during runoff. The water level rises up towards surface pollution. The soil above this shallow duck pond is so porous, so permeable, that surface pollutants, including septage, would be rapidly conducted downward with precipitation and irrigation water, and it will head towards the aquifer that is literally sucked into the adjacent wells to the north. Worse, over 6 million annual gallons of household chemicals, fertilizers, nitrates, and gross pathogens, who knows what pathogens, from those 57 drain fields on 28 acres would move downward towards the groundwater at an astonishing 2 to 4 feet per day. All of these facts are confirmed by the Level 2 NPE study, which was conducted by the developer in 2021. And by the way, it's important for you to know that that Panhandle Health has confirmed to our Safe Water group that no other community over the aquifer could circumvent the 5-acre rule by doing a Level 2 NPE study. Ironically, the Green Ferry water community faces this horrific danger simply because of that old EPA boundary, which was actually created to save Kootenai County from gross pollution. Those people back in the 70s did the right thing, thought they were doing a good thing. They would be horrified to know what has happened to our community because some people are stuck in the 20th century and don't move forward to the latest hydrogeological data that we all have access to. So only a few days ago, in response to County Emergency Ordinance 574, our water community has been circulating a brand new petition directed to the Department of Community Development and to the Board of Kootenai County Commissioners. And once again, we're begging for protection of the 5-acre rule. Our petition has 9 points as to why, despite the 1977 EPA aquifer boundary, our drinking water deserves equal protection by this new subsurface sewage disposal ordinance to soon be adopted. I do, Mr. Chairman, want to be sure I get the entire message delivered, so thank you for a little extra time.
It's okay.
I have a binder here, and it holds, I'm going to submit this for evidence. This binder is holding approximately 150 petitions that we've just gathered in the last few days. We've only been doing petition effort since, 10 days. We have many more to gather. As I was coming to the meeting, I got another bunch that I didn't even get into the binder. They're coming in by the many, because there's one thing that the Greens Ferry water neighborhoods and a community, everybody agrees on: safe water. It's just, there's no argument. And we also include in this binder the hundreds of signatures we gathered in 2020, also asking for protection of the 5-acre rule. One of the petition points is that since 1992, 2 federal agencies and 3 Idaho state regulatory agencies have published information confirming that the Green Ferry community, which we have always known, that our Green Ferry wells are completed in the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. Our neighborhood treasure is this marvelous antique, printed in 1992. It's an informational flyer, and we had it blown up. 2 sides, it's a beauty, all in color. It's an informational flyer about the SVRP aquifer, printed and disseminated in 1992, 15 years after the aquifer boundary of 1977 had been codified as terminating north of the Spokane River. By 1992, much additional hydrogeological information had been gathered, and this flyer shows how the boundary designations had been greatly adjusted from the 1977 boundary in both Washington and Idaho states. This flyer shows that much territory south of the Spokane River lies within the SVRP aquifer boundary. I don't suppose there's any way we could get it up on the screen, is there? As big as it is. No. So, all right, I'll just hand this to you. This is just precious. And I'll give you a big glass, and you can take a look at the dotted line and see how this 1992 boundary was way south of the river in both states, in Washington State and Idaho State.
Yeah, that's huge.
This, so the white dotted line, as I say, shows the new and improved boundary, one that we approve of. And we have included a copy of this flyer in the binder book, so if anybody wants to have that flyer, you can see it. Or you can, keep it in your records. The arrow that we put on clearly shows our Green Ferry well area, and the 28 acres do indeed lie within the dotted line boundary south of the river. And the most exciting part of this flyer is on the back page, because it was subsidized by none other than the EPA itself. And it was disseminated by none other than our very own Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, which had a slightly different name in those days. And it was also supported and disseminated by Panhandle Health District. Both of those agencies are listed on the back with Kootenai County phone numbers. Then in 2005, the USGS, which had done the original mapping work for the old 1977 boundary, published its new boundary information with maps again showing Green Ferry water lying within the boundary, the SVRP boundary. And then in 2020, by some amazing miracle, one of our concerned neighborhood inquirists was able to contact Daniel Sturgis, who is an expert hydrogeologist conducting the latest research on the aquifer boundary for Idaho Department of Water Resources. And he confirmed in that 2020 letter to Greens Ferry stakeholders that his updated research supports the 2005 USGS mapping showing that Green Ferry wells are indeed completed in the SVRP aquifer. Mr. Sturgis spoke to the Green Ferry Water and Sewer District Board in 2020. He confirmed this information, explaining the aquifer boundary in our well area lies not only south of the Spokane River, but it goes all the way south to Riverview Road, which means that it's in my front yard. Mr. Sturgis will come talk to you if you invite him. He won't come talk to you if we invite him, but he is a valuable resource for you. So by popular demand and by important published documents, the ordinance draft up for public comment tonight needs to go back to the drawing board for adequate discussion of how Green Ferry water customers can be protected by the 5-acre rule, which according to Kootenai County Emergency Ordinance 574 is critical to public welfare, health, and safety. Green Ferry stakeholders feel that we must have equal protection under county law. And we believe from reading the Idaho Code, IDAPA, that county officials are both obligated and authorized to make this work. Our water community is no longer willing to be neglected, abused, denied, discriminated against. We want to get some agencies together, however it works out, to find a solution and to ultimately make this new ordinance in its final form work for everyone. So here's our petition binder for the public record, and we will be adding to it over the weeks to come. We'll just keep collecting petitions until they rise to the ceiling, if that's what it takes. If I have talked too much and you don't remember a word I say, we've included a cheat sheet in our little neighborhood binder here. We have, as I say, all the petitions, a list of the petitioners, and so you can read our points. But the most important thing maybe in this binder is our cheat sheet, because that is a letter from Daniel Sturgis of Idaho Department of Water Resources. And he says here, the 2005 USGS investigation extended the aquifer boundary to include areas south of the Spokane River, including Greens Ferry wells. Although his department is in the process of completing an updated investigation of the SVRP aquifer boundary, this investigation also finds the Greens Ferry wells to be completed in the SVRP aquifer. That's pretty good, and that goes very well with ordinance number 574, which says, whereas Kootenai County and Panhandle Health District have a mutual interest in ensuring the continuing protection of health and safety of its residents and desires to enact an ordinance to maintain existing rules pertaining to subsurface sewage disposal, establishing a minimum parcel size of 5 acres for health, welfare, and safety. So we're entitled. And what we want to know is, when are we going to find conscientious officials who can make that happen for us for sure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'll put back the little cheat sheet, and here's your map. It's not quite as big, but it's priceless.
Make sure she gets that back.
It should be in county records.
We will enter that exhibit as P 1006.
Jane, there's your,
Oh, yes, thank you so much.
That map out of the DEQ book? Or where did you get that map from?
This came from one of the neighbors, one of the Green Ferry well customers. He had this in her attic for 30 years.
Okay, it maybe come from the
you're
DEQ
right,
book.
exactly.
Mr. Chairman, the last speaker is Dan McCracken.
I actually don't need to make any additional comments for DEQ.
Okay.
And that concludes the people that have signed up to speak.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak?
I'm checking Zoom to see if there's anyone. Looks like it's just staff, although there's a Sandy here that I don't recognize. Sandy, did you want to participate in tonight's hearings?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Can we do it at a break?
Then that would conclude the people on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Go ahead.
Josette? Josette? Yes. Could you come identify something on this map for me for a second? Does this line represent the Spokane River?
Yes, my husband, he's the one who's did So this little inset here, right there, is this?
Yes.
And the blue line that you're seeing is the river.
Oh, okay. Okay, you can't see it very well in there. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other speakers? If not, would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing for ORA 21-0005 and ORA 21-0002?
Motion so made.
Okay, Commissioner Dean made a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rose. All in favor? Oh, actually, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the public hearing is over and we'll move into deliberations. Before we move into deliberations, I think we may want to take just a 10-minute break to process what we've heard, type of thing. So why don't we try to come back around 7:35 or so? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for being there.
Of course, yeah. Commission. Director Callahan, did you want to just make a comment before we go into deliberations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's on the screen, there's a chat note from our legal counsel, Pat Brady. This came in to you while you were taking testimony, and I actually just didn't see it come in. So I wanted to make it available to you now because it really should be part of the record. I'll give you just a moment to read through it.
Yeah. You want to read it for the record?
Oh, sure. It reads, the property everyone is complaining about was zoned restricted residential with a CZDA limiting density. CZDA is our shorthand for effectively an overlay that reduces the zoning so that it's limited in ways that by right zoning would allow.
Okay.
It goes on to read, therefore that zoning or minimum parcel size or maximum density cannot be changed without giving due process to the property owner. So what Pat reminds me of, and he's online in Zoom to take any questions you have, but if it's okay, I'll springboard on that.
Yes, please.
Again, as you stated in the beginning of this is really trying to deal with the critical issue before you. We can always circle back around to reconsider density, either through a rezoning or other considerations of the mapping, but my concern is that we get something going forward soon so that the water is protected, at least for now, in ways that we need.
Okay, anyone, before we go and start deliberating, anyone have any questions for David or Pat? Okay, if not, what are people thinking? Comments from anyone?
Can Pat hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Pat, I want to make sure I understand. Can you hear me, Pat?
Yeah, can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understand. We can go ahead and move forward and approve this with the stipulation that we can add this added area in if we need to, or, and consider it later? Is that what we're saying?
No.
I wouldn't add it in. I wouldn't add it in now. You can certainly, say that we've heard the concerns of the Green Ferry community, and I apologize for the background noise, but and that we will, we would like to, consider adding that at a later time. But at this time, we will be would adopt the permanent ordinance referencing the 1977 EPA map as far as the boundaries of the aquifer. And by the way, I would also note there's, that area is not the only area of concern. Another one that comes up is the Choco Channel aquifer around the Choco Mill between Hayden and Apple, and that's another area where that, this kind of issue could come up.
Right.
So certainly, just because we adopt one boundary now doesn't mean we can't add to it later.
Okay. It was hard to hear all of what you're saying, but I got the gist of.
Yeah, I think that this is the type of thing we talked about at our last workshop, where when we decide on a motion and when you vote on that motion, you have the capability of going and saying that I'm voting this way, however, I want the county commissioners to understand that I, A, B, C, D, or E, whatever that is. So it's basically saying where we have concerns or don't have concerns, whatever your view is, but it's a way of signaling to the county commissioners that we believe some other things may need to be addressed. Now, how that's addressed is not specified because we don't know, because this discussion we had tonight was about, there's a combination of things. It's all about water quality, but there's also density, it's also zoning, and they've requested, and there are ways of getting zoning done differently what sub-area zoning and everything else that we've talked about. So that's what we're trying to come to grips with tonight is we have a sense of urgency of, we have a hard stop, and that is September 25th. If we do not do something and the county commissioners do not have their public hearing to go and approve something, then basically all the areas in that map today will revert back to the old zoning, and therefore endanger the water quality, which nobody in this room wants, type of thing. On the other hand, we've heard very compelling arguments and information from a group of very concerned people about their water quality. Now, what that subdivision is separate because it was through the process or is in the process, and they have their own stream, but we can't necessarily change what was. We can change what will be in the future once we have the ability to do that with a lot more research than we probably have. So I think it's a really, this is why being on the Planning and Zoning Commission is not an easy job. Comments? Anybody is wanting to make a motion to accept the amendment as submitted for ORA 21-0002 and submit that recommendation to the county commissioners for their consideration? Anybody want to make a motion to do that at this time?
Can I make that motion with the stipulation that, unfortunately, I couldn't hear really well all of what Pat was saying, but that asking the commissioners to take into consideration what Pat was telling us? I mean,
That would be fine.
that would be fine, Pat? Okay.
Okay, what is the motion, actually? So it's a motion to accept the amendment submitted for ORA 21-0002 and provide.
And to have Pat provide the added information to address the concerns that we were hearing tonight about the boundary in the Greens Ferry area. David Callahan's looking perplexed.
Well, I think what happens is because we normally don't recommend something for the commissioners in a motion, we approve the motion and then recommend it with our comments after the fact. So the motion is to approve it or not approve it, or approve it with a new map or whatever we want the motion to be. And then when we vote, or if the planning commission wants to, at our workshop next week, draft a letter to send to the county commissioners on what we learned tonight and encourage them to do something, that's another acceptable process.
I'm hesitant the way you worded that, Commissioner Rose. It sounded like you wanted Pat to follow up with an explanation. I would rather there be something concrete said tonight about what you mean to have happen.
Yeah, and what I was trying to say is what, Pat?
I was just going to say perhaps you could amend the motion to say that, to move that the permanent ordinance that the commissioners move to recommend that the commissioners approve the permanent ordinance as presented, and then perhaps, after you get the second in discussion, mention, that, advise the commissioners that they should
Say what I'm saying.
take into, take serious consideration for what the Green Ferry community testified to tonight.
Okay, you repeat all that and I'll make
Well,
the
no, sorry,
motion.
what Pat is saying is similar to what I said, which is the motion is itself to approve the code amendment as submitted and to go and submit that to the county commissioners for their consideration. Then when we go through comments before we second it and before we vote, or as we vote, we then can go and put our comments to the county. Comments before we second it and before we vote, or as we vote, we then can go and put our comments to the county commissioners. So I think what county commissioners are going to be told loud and clear, I suspect, at least from me and you and maybe others, that we would like them to, and we have a responsibility as planning commissioners, that we need to go and try to understand this better and address it in whatever way is possible. But we don't know what that is yet, and in order to get this ordinance approved, we need to go and get it approved before September 25th. So therefore, we're putting some responsibility on us to go and work with them and the county and the other departments to try to figure it out. It may be a zoning issue. It may be a mapping issue. It could be a combination of those. I think that's where we are, Deborah.
Okay.
All right? So the motion.
Chairman?
Yeah.
A point of clarification. I don't know if this is ORA 22 dash
Oh, yes, I'm right. You're right. I'm
0002.
sorry.
You've been saying 21 the entire
Yeah.
night. So
I-
just for
what
the record.
This is what happens when you go and cut and paste from last year's, or the year before, so thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Do I have to do anything to correct any of these ORAs?
It's just been corrected.
Thank you. So in the minutes, can you thank you. Thank you, Sherry. All right, so a motion to accept the amendments as submitted for ORA 22 hyphen 0002 and present to the county commissioners for their consideration is made by? Anybody?
I so move.
Okay, Commissioner David made the motion. Do I have a second?
I will so second it.
Okay, Commissioner Dean. I'm going to do a roll call for this. Any discussion before we do this? If not, again, you have an opportunity to speak. So Commissioner Rose?
Well, I will approve it with the understanding that we've all just discussed.
Okay. Commissioner Dean?
I'd recommend approval and also add my comments that we need to address the issues, but not only just for the people that presented tonight, but the other ones that are out there. So we need a more encompassing solution. But
Okay.
yes, I recommend approval
Okay.
of those conditions.
Commissioner Zao?
I also recommend approval and to evaluate the two maps that have been brought forward to see if there should be a change in the future.
Okay. Commissioner Glader?
Yeah, I would vote to approve, but I agree with all these comments that are being made. I think we need to strongly communicate.
Is this on? Yeah. I think we need to strongly communicate to commissioners that, we have there are some real concerns that these people have brought up. I mean, it's obvious. The Greens Ferry area, maybe there are other areas that need to be looked at, need to be addressed, need to be investigated and addressed.
Right. Commissioner Dean? David?
I concur as well. I wish we had time to go back to the drawing board at this time, but we don't. This simply has to get passed, or we lose the protection of the aquifer that we have right now.
And I will vote yes also. And I would like to, first of all, thank the folks who came tonight and provided us the information. That is something that is interesting and compelling. I'd like to apologize if you were not aware of the workshops that we did have on this topic, because our goal and objective is always to get public comment on these things. The public makes these things better. And the water quality issue you're talking about is an incredibly important issue that the Planning Commission, when we updated our comprehensive plan several years ago, you will notice in there numerous policies that address water insufficiency problems and water quality issues. And we're trying desperately to work with David and his team to try to figure out ways to make that problem less of a problem. But it's very difficult for you know more about it than I do about that. I also encourage the members of the public Our emails are on the county website. If you have comments, if you have things that you're providing the county that are land use related, please send it to us. And we'll put it on the agenda and we'll try to get some of these things. We're just like you, we're members of the public, working, trying to do what's best for our community, and we understand your concern, a legitimate concern. So the motion passes 6-0 with comments to the county commissioners that make it clear that the planning commission recommends that not only the planning commissioners work on trying to work with the local community in different areas to see what we need to do to help them address the concerns they have, again, whether it's zoning or whether it's some other avenue that we don't know about. So that is our recommendation. All right. The next one will be quicker, I hope. The next one is basically is the Hauser ACI amendment, which is ORA 220005. Does anybody have a motion to approve that as submitted and present to the county commissioners for their consideration?
I would so move.
Okay, Commissioner Dean. And do I have a second?
I would second.
Okay. Commissioner Later, I'm just going to do a roll call. Commissioner Rose?
Yes.
Okay.
Nah, this one's pretty
Yeah.
simple. I don't see
Commi-
much to
I
discuss
know.
on this one.
Commissioner Dean?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Zayao?
Yes.
Commissioner Glader?
Yes.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
And Commissioner Levine, yes. The motion passes 6-0 and will be submitted to the county commissioners for their consideration. And I will, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Commissioner Rose
I'll
makes
make the
that motion. Commissioner Dean is seconded?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at whatever time it is. It is 7:50.
I'll take this.
Thanks.